Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 284. And wouldn't you know it, we have some controversy to talk about when it surrounds Tottenham Hotspur. It's just a run-of-the-mill podcast we're doing this week. It is, of course, Spurs 1, Leeds 1. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into where we stand, what's going on. There's 2 matches to play. Obviously, a lot of cards are on the table. Speaking of cards on the table, Mr. TC is here. He is at TC_Kasho. Todd, what is up, my friend?
What's up, brother? Any day you can talk about, 4 games on the spin where you're taking home points is a good day. Not mad about that at all.
That is certainly a way to look at it, which I was, I did glance at that and I thought, oh, okay. It is at least trending in a direction. Whether or not that is a fully positive direction is still to be determined, but we'll kind of have to see
what's
how
interesting
it plays out.
Is the 2 matches in which we took home a singular point were arguably 2 of the matches where you would have looked at them as terms of the game on the pitch and thought that we should have come home with 3 points from those matches. So, yes, trends in a positive direction, no doubt.
Yeah, it's weird that we can't seem to just win a damn game at home. They have to be draws. Like, what the hell's going on here? It's
if we were left to our own devices, I would feel as though we would probably have more wins at home on the season.
I would hope so.
But I mean, we'll clearly come on to that. There were certainly some instances in which you could argue that things occurred that were out of our control.
We'll get into it all. I will just let the listeners and the viewers, if you're only a listener, bully for you. If you want to be a viewer, you can check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. But I will just let everyone in on the timestamp of this episode. We're recording this on Tuesday evening. The match was obviously Monday, so we waited a day, which I think we were discussing before I hit the record button. I think that was probably the right decision because I think we both have come to different positions than we may have had previously 24 hours ago.
I was such a grumpy Gus. I was such a grumpy Gus yesterday. So
and as the listeners are going to find out, I've kind of come around on some things that happened in this match that I want to compare and contrast on. But yeah, let's just get into it. It's an unchanged 11 from the Villa match, which I think we all expected because honestly, what else are you going to do? Yeah, what else are you going to do at this point? Spurs are down to it in terms of their injuries, but I think where I want to start with this match is actually with Mathys Tel, because he's the goal scorer in this match for the club. He also was, I almost said committed a penalty, but I'll say was called for a penalty for a high boot. And I want to center at least the first part of this conversation around Tel because I really like Mathys Tel as a player. I think he's supremely talented. And I think that can be you can pretty much just point to the goal that he scored and say, see, this is a talented dude. I got a text message from my father yesterday, who longtime listeners will know is a very, very, very casual soccer fan. But he texted me, "What a bullshit call." And I almost had to say, which call would that be that you're referring to exactly? And he laughed and said, the call that led to the penalty that Leeds got, referring to the call on Tel. And my immediate reaction was yes, and because it's always going to be yes and with me. I think Mathys Tel is, like I said, a supremely talented player. And what I said to my dad in this scenario was Mathys Tel is obviously has a brilliant right foot, which he displayed in scoring the goal. But he also let that right foot get him into trouble with some decision making. And it's not just with the penalty that I'm referring to. The decision making overall with Mathys Tel is it's a blinking red light to me. And again, I'm not just referring to the penalty that he was called for. I'm talking about his game in general. His decision making is subpar. There's just no other way to put it for me right now. He's not making the correct decisions in a lot of positions, and it's costing the team. And again, talent can overcome a lot of that. But what I saw in this match specifically was Mathys Tel getting into a lot of really positive, really strong attacking positions and then not knowing what to do from there. It looked a lot like Wilson Odobert looked early in the season, if I'm being honest, from a decision-making standpoint alone. Obviously, I think Tel is a more talented player, just from a pure footballing perspective than Odobert. Maybe not. Opinions can differ there, but the decision making for me is something that needs to drastically improve with him. What say you?
I say three things, always three. First things first, shout to him for that goal. That was an absolute banger. That's something we've been looking for Matthias Tell regularly. And that is something now 3 weeks on the spin that you've seen Spurs score from outside the box. And that is a massive, massive thing for us. It's a huge deal because, especially early in the season, we were not taking shots from outside the box. And that was one of my big concerns about the way that we were set up offensively. In terms of Matthias Tell's decision making, I there's a yes and here. Yes, I agree with you. His decision making this season has been subpar. And this is his first full season playing as a 7. And it's a challenge knowing when to, when you have a striker's instinct, knowing when to lay that ball off or look to square the cross or look to play it across the face of goal as opposed to firing into the side netting, right? Because instinct, as a 9 your whole life, says head up, beat the man, shoot, right? But when you're doing that from a narrow angle, it's a tough day.
Absolutely.
So we've seen some of those, especially over the course of the last few weeks. And I really just kind of remove everything before De Zerbi got here because I just
Sure.
at this stage of the game,
I get what you're saying there, but again, yes,
the
and
decision
like
making has been a question mark along the way. But to be fair, for half the season, the majority of our team didn't look like they know what the fuck they were doing.
they didn't know what
So
decisions they should be making because
exactly
they
that.
weren't getting guidance.
So the and in this is, and I think that was a completely absolute fucking dog water penalty call that the Leeds player made a meal of it. VAR had the opportunity to go back and freeze frame the slight moment where there may have been a touch on the player. But when you actually look at the play, Andrew, in real time, Matthias Tell doesn't see that guy coming. His
Not at all.
back is literally to the player. All he's focused on is trying to clear the ball. So I'm 21-year-old Matthias Tell. I'm looking at the ball in the air over my head, running back to it, going, okay, how do I control this ball and get it the hell out of here? Well, it's going to be, I don't know where the man is behind me. I can't feel him, so I don't know where the man is behind me. So I need to figure out how I'm going to clear this ball. Do I, A, try to trap it over my head and not play it out for a corner and not get pressed and not give it up? Do I, B, try to turn my body and accept it off the chest and maybe looking at a defender coming in my face and give up a defensive position that's not advantageous? Or C, just fucking try to bicycle kick clearance this motherfucker out of here and get it away from danger. I completely understand how C in that moment was a viable option. And so the reason why I say this is such a dog water penalty is because a big portion, in my opinion, to a penalty is intent, right?
At
And
times, I think that can be
no,
true.
you can't. And what I'm saying is that the way that the rule is written, intent plays a part.
Yeah.
And so it's the same reason why you can wave off an unintentional handball, right?
Right.
It's the same sort of thing. It's intent.
And I think that
Whereas
is true
Odegaard
with
puts
this
his
case
fucking
as
hand
well.
on the ball and does a breakdancing move, and that's a little different, right? So what I'm saying is, in this scenario, if I'm the referee in that moment and I'm watching the replay, I'm looking at it in full time. I'm not looking at the one moment where, and this is the thing that fucking pisses me off, yet alone about VAR, is that as old buddy's walking over to the monitor, we can see that they freeze framed it on the moment where Tell's foot is touching or potentially not touching the player. And it's
Yeah.
like, talk about a fucking narrative affirming decisions over here, Andrew. Like, I just like the soap opera of VAR in the Premier League referees is a conversation we'll have later in the day. But for the time being, as we're just talking about this Tell situation, I would like to see more consistency when it comes to calling penalties based off of intent as opposed to inadvertent fuckery. That's one. And the second thing that I would say on that is I don't fault Matthias Tell for giving away that penalty. Like, yes, in a vacuum, never high boot in your own box, right?
Right.
But also, in a split second, in that moment, he's scans the field, ball goes up. He goes, okay, I have enough time to clear this if I bike it. Turns around. The offensive player in that moment runs toward contact, not the ball. He runs toward contact, yet alone an intent issue, right?
Hmm.
His intent was to get contact with Tell. Tell's intent was to clear the ball.
Right.
And so that's why I feel like if you don't look at this from an intent standpoint, you do the entire game a disservice by just freeze framing at the point where there was potential contact with a high boot.
Well, and naysayers, what the naysayers would say to that is it's hard to judge intent in the moment, which perhaps, but upon review, and here's the other problem, and I know you're not going to disagree with this. The problem with the VAR challenge check is not only the freeze framing and sending the on-field official over to the monitor, it's the amount of time that it took, especially after the play. Because if you remember, Spurs had already moved the ball down the pitch and were in an offensive attacking position, and then the whistle blows. It's like, what are we doing there? It was interesting to me that on the broadcast, they were pointing out that it might have actually been Ampadu that was in the wrong here for going in the way that he did.
Uh-huh.
Like, that was what was pointed out by the broadcasters, and that there was, to your point, there was no intent from Tell to bring a high boot. The reason I bring up the decision-making stuff is exactly the thing you said about bringing a high boot up in your own box and just the risk that brings. Again, not saying that there was intent, because there certainly was not, but the risk that brings when doing that, and when you don't know that there's a player barreling down on you because you don't see him, that's where that comes in. But I agree with everything you've said in that it's not a penalty that you see called in a normal scenario. And again, if we're talking about clear and obvious, if that is the bar for VAR, and we're going to talk about another clear and obvious thing in a little bit here, but that's not clear and obvious to me in any way, shape, or form.
Let's talk about the clear and obvious thing that was the third fucking time that we went to VAR in that match. And
Right.
the second time that they were looking for a foul against Spurs, the first time they couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm saying to you, Andrew, that like, given all of those things, to spend any more than a moment on Matthias Tell's gaff is, I think, a waste of breath and a waste of opinion. Matthias Tell has had one of the toughest seasons
Yes, no
of
question.
any Spurs player out there, especially off the back of the year that he had last year, and the way that he was an emotional stalwart when the fans were turning on this team. And he was the one, even as a lone player in that moment, to show the maturity to say, hey, stick together. We have a plan. We're going to make it through this. And we did. And we did. And so for all of that to be going the way that it's going now is challenging, because we had, I think back on the beginning podcast of this season, and Matthias Tell was one of the players that I highlighted as one that I was really excited to watch develop under Thomas Frank, who was supposed to be this development guru. And I saw anything but.
Right.
And that was super disappointing for me. And to have the beginning of this game look like a Matthias Tell coming out party, and have the it spoiled by that moment, was tough.
Sure. And we can move off of Tell. I want to emphasize that when I talk about Tell's decision making, it has very, very little to do with what happened on the penalty call and a lot more about what he's doing offensively as well. Because he finally got the chance and took advantage of it, but there could have been so much more, to your point, of what he was producing early on in the match. And I just think that there is decision making, and that comes with growth playing in this league. Like, that's something that he is still doing and learning. And for this to be his first full season and him to be producing in the way that he is, I still think is a check mark in his corner. And that's a win for him because he has gotten that experience and is learning it. Coming
Well,
into
people
this,
forget he's only 21. He's a young 21.
absolutely, no question. I'm not, like I said, I'm not out in any way, shape, or form here. I'm almost more in than I have been. I see that one more thing that needs to click, and once it does, I'm saying look out. So I'm excited about that part of this. Coming into this match, I definitely this was the match I expected against Leeds, despite the fact that, based on the results on the weekend, which we can at least touch on, West Ham falling in their effort to pick up any points, did clinch safety for both Leeds and Nottingham Forest. So Leeds was coming into this match on Monday knowing full well that they are safe and have Premier League football going forward into next season. So that didn't really change many opinion from me onto how they were going to play it. I still thought that this would be a scrappier match than the Villa one, because Villa were, had their focus elsewhere. They were focused on that semifinal in the Europa League against Forest, and they were sitting back a little bit more and allowed Spurs to play a little bit more of the De Zerbi ball that they have learned over the last few weeks. This match I thought would be a little different, and it was. However, I still think that the midfield that Tottenham put out was really, really strong and gave a really, really good effort and was pressing the ball when the opportunity presented itself. It presented itself way less than it did against Villa because of the way that Leeds set up with the wing backs and just more action in that midfield, which is, like I said, is exactly the kind of game, like the 1-1 result. I think, for all intents and purposes, I don't want to say it was a fair result, but I see how that played out. And before the match, I would have almost said this is going to be a really scrappy 1-1, and I would have said, yeah, that sounds about right. Like that sounds like how this will probably go. So the match played out in similar ways to how I expected it to, but the midfield, I think, looked worse just because of how Leeds played, but I don't think they played much worse than they did against Villa.
No, and I think that clearly, until Matters, which we'll come on to, obviously, shout to Matters, until Matters is fully fit, this is without a doubt our best starting midfield, and especially with the way that De Zerbi wants to play. Two things. One, this was, as the way that Leeds set up, this was a match that cried out for Matters, or like a healthy Matters earlier, right? You needed a creative spark in this match, and we've heard that 1,000 times. But to the team's credit, they actually created a ton of chances. And if we had
Absolutely.
fucking better finishers on the end of them besides Kolo Muani and Richie, like, we're having a different conversation.
Well,
There
or
was,
Gallagher and Polina too. Like
or I was going to say, and there were two opportunities where the midfielders had cracks and they missed
mm-hmm.
them as well.
Yes.
And so, if you don't take your chances, especially in that first half, you run the risk of the decision making being out of your hands in the second half. Which is essentially, this is what I've come to, Andrew, is that we just need to hang a 3-spot on everybody that we play in the first half for the rest of the time and just fight our way to the finish in the second 45 minutes. Like, that's essentially what it's boiled down to. If we can fucking finish our first half chances, like, I think we have a legitimate chance of staying up for the rest.
I thought that the biggest thing in the midfield from me was simply, I thought you were starting to see the effects by about the 55th, 60th minute of playing in this way that they've been playing, not only against Villa last week, but even in this match, where it's press, it's go, it's pressure the ball. Like, this is what Spurs have to do right now. They're desperate for points. So you have to be playing with this high intensity, high tempo type of feel. And I just thought, especially Rodrigo Bentancur needed to be taken off the pitch probably after 55, 60 minutes. He did not come off until the 81st minute. And I thought that the just the levels dropped. Polina as well. Just the levels had dropped because of fatigue, because these guys are playing really, really high intensity football. I would have liked to have seen Sarr or Bergvall come on a little bit earlier to try and give a little bit more spark in that midfield. But at the same time, I don't know how much you can trust those guys to come in and do the same exact thing that had been being done for the first part of the match.
Yeah, and you can't, right? You can't. The only like for like that's even a remote comp for Polinia uh, is Basuma. The like for like comp for Bentancur is Bergval or Sar, and they're a step below.
Big time.
Well, no, because I mean, to his credit, like we've seen kind of a resurgent Rodrigo Bentancur since he's been back, but it's just to your point,
He's
the
been good, but the fatigue
fatigue
sets
sets
in. Yeah.
in early,
Yeah.
which is fine. Let's say, how old is he at this stage of the game? Like it's fine. I think he's 31, right? No, 29,
Bentancur,
31. He's been around for a minute, right?
he is 28.
28, really?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't think
Man,
he
that
was
is
as
a
old as you were saying. Born June
that's a
20.
haggard looking 28-year-old. If we're being
So,
honest about it, good
so
gravy.
he'll be 29 next month.
Okay,
But he's also
I'm
this.
ready.
We're
I'm
talking about
ready,
a player that's been through how many injuries and how many like you gotta
dude. And
you got
he had a full career at Juventus before he even got here.
absolutely. So again, this I'm not when I say what I'm saying about the midfield, I'm saying it's because they were playing so hard and giving so much effort that I thought the levels dropped, not because
Well, no,
the
no,
levels just
I
dropped.
I understand. It's like you say, bring on Bergval earlier, which Bergval was the first sub, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. He came on
Um,
for Bentancur.
and that's just an immediate drop off.
Big time.
And so, especially when you don't have a creative force up front, right? So then you're relying on a tired Conor Gallagher to play the 10.
Mm-hmm. And you don't
So,
have the backup there either because of James Madison, who look, praise be. I was delighted to see James Madison come off the bench, but he obviously was going to be leggy and not match fit whatsoever. He came on in the 85th minute, and then they throw 13 minutes on top of the 90. So he got some minutes. Like he got his what is that 18? If I'm doing my math correct, he got like 18, 19 minutes. That's a good start. But
yeah.
with 2 matches left, I don't know if you what else you can expect from James Madison in these final 2 games. Probably not much more than he offered in this one. So you're gonna need the stamina and the fatigue from these other guys to be able to carry the torch.
No, you're 100% correct. Unfortunately, we have a little over a week before the next match, and so that's super helpful. Um, a lot of these guys for matters just what I'm talking about when I say there's it's completely different to train than to getting on the pitch in a match. It's completely different.
Completely,
It is.
especially when you're being thrown into a situation like this one where Spurs are so desperate. They're fighting relegation. They're battling against a team. It's 1-1. You need to get that goal back so you can get those extra 2 points. Like that situation and that scenario, there the not only does the match fitness and the game readiness ramp up, but the pressure just alone from the situation is at a max.
Yeah, and I feel like for a pro like Matters, this situation is, he's played hundreds of games. The situation is the situation. It's
Mm-hmm.
just about going out and executing in the moment. And I think that the biggest difference, the crowd is whatever. The lights are a little brighter. Everything's a little bigger, right? But like, it's the speed, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
It's
100%.
everybody else being out there and already warm and sweaty as fuck,
Yeah.
and you're dry and trying to get into the match, and it's everybody's when you're already warmed up. It's like a race car on warmed up tires. Like you hug the road better than a race car on fresh tires. It's like that exists as well. So it takes a while just to get in there and get your legs and get up to the pace of the game. And so I thought Matters, for all intents and purposes, put himself forward as best as could be expected of him in given the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, I think to your point, we can't expect much more of him than this. If anything, what this is trying to do is give him an outside shot of making an England squad, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think very outside shot, but
Yeah, it's very very outside, but it's he was the assistant captain of his team last year,
yeah,
and so
and it was great to have him
and you could
back.
and it was great to have him in the middle of the pitch barking at the referees for doing some dumb shit nonsense, and like it made me very grateful for his presence as a Spurs fan, right? It's certainly something that we've been lacking in his absence.
Well, something else that will make us grateful for his presence is the fact that he can step into a scenario like this and draw what looks like a clear and obvious penalty that is immediately waved off and then 20 seconds later is checked by VAR and dismissed out of hand. And I think that this is where I'm going to admit to the listeners and the viewers that when I watched this last night, I thought, well, the defender got a touch on the ball. What else are you going to do? And I've completely flipped on that. Not only because we have now seen in the 24 hours since some new angles that prove and show that that touch did not come from the defender, but instead came from James Madison's right foot himself. And I think the coolest part of all of this is that James Madison himself has taken to social media and basically told everyone to fuck off with all that. If you
Uh-huh.
missed it, James Madison on social media, I believe this is on his Instagram page, posted in his stories. For clarity, the small, tiny touch on the ball to change direction came from the outside of my right foot. Not is it Mecha? That's how you
Yeah.
pronounce his name. And I told the ref that, but the check was over in about 20 seconds. Here's the key to this post now. And if you're seeing this on the screen, if you're watching us on YouTube, the real key to this post from James Madison. Officials are petrified to make decisions on pitch
Uh-huh.
now because of
Uh-huh.
VAR. We keep fighting Coys. And I'm sorry, but spot the lie.
There is no lie. Jared Gillett is an absolute toad, and I'd happily meet him in a dark parking lot for a conversation. Uh, I was fuming at his cowardice, Andrew, in the moment, and that's really what it was more than anything else. Is it's cowardice. Is he looks at it and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to rely on Craig Pawson in the booth to tell me whether or not that was a pen because this is too important of a moment for me to interrupt." And I think that that is the absolute opposite of what you have a referee in the middle of the pitch for. And it breaks my heart that we witnessed a clear and obvious pen in the box in the penultimate moment. And Jared Gillett crapped his pants live on television and failed football with that non-call.
It's especially damning when you consider the fact that we use this phrase clear and obvious all the time. And to me, that is a clear and obvious error. And it becomes more and more clear and obvious when you take the time to look at it. When you take the time to look at the earlier penalty shout against Matisse Tell, and when I'm talking about time, look how much time they added to the end of the game. I already mentioned it, but they added 13 fucking minutes to the end of this game because of the delay that it took to determine that Matisse Tell apparently committed a foul in the box. They took 20 seconds on this one. They just waved it off and then checked it and then it was gone. And didn't take the time to actually check this one for being clear and obvious, which it so obviously was. And look, like I said, 24 hours ago, I was in the camp that, oh, well, there was a touch on the ball. But that doesn't actually determine whether or not it should be a penalty. When you watch it again, it is a reckless challenge and in the box, and it's a penalty.
It's a
And
penalty. It's a
and
foul anywhere else on the pitch, Andrew. It's a foul anywhere else on the pitch, whether he got a touch on the ball or not. It is a foul. That is and that was my biggest thing about it. Is who can give a fuck if he touched the ball or not? I've watched Cudi Romero cleanly crush the ball and then go over it and go into a player and catch a red card and get tossed out the fucking game, let alone give up a penalty. I'm looking at this and like obviously I have the largest of the tinfoil hats on this podcast, and that's fine. I understand that. Scott and I fought for that mantle for a while, but I would assert that mine is just a little more grandiose than his.
I think you've taken it for sure.
I appreciate that. However, when the empirical data backs up exactly what I've been fucking saying on this podcast for literally years, I look at it and go, Andrew, the last time that we scored a penalty in the league, Harry Kane took that shit, right? Like,
Is that true?
something along those lines,
But
brother. I want you to
it's
take a
got to at
look at
least
it.
be close. I mean, I know we haven't had one this season, which is really saying
Oh no,
something.
we
And
haven't had
listen,
one. We haven't had one for like the majority of the last season, and I don't know that we actually scored them when they were given. I want to say like within the last three that have been scored for us, Harry Kane has one of them. We'll say that. And
part of this is
that's where we
obviously
are in this
because
world.
Spurs don't have the attacking threats and prowess in the box. We talked earlier about how like they haven't been doing the
Or
thing. But when you see
or
this, it's there's evidence. There's clear evidence on video.
well, there's been clear evidence on video is my entire point here. And I've heard the rub of the green conversation from many a podcaster when it comes to this is just part of football, and like sometimes, every team thinks the ref is biased against them and all of this. But like there's literal empirical data, like charted data where Spurs are up and to the right of teams who get fucked and everybody else is kind of clustered in the middle. And you look at that, between that and the fact that we haven't got a penalty in 18 months or whatever the fuck it is, and you look at that and compare it to the fact that we're the highest ratio foul to card team in the entire league and have been, like, to have anyone stand there, and then you look at the what your own eyes tell you in that match on Sunday, in the penultimate moment where a foul occurred in the offensive box for Spurs, which by the rule of football should have been a penalty. And there was a no call and a quick check, and Bob's your fucking uncle.
Yeah, to your point about the cards too, by the way, I think it was Poro's yellow yesterday that was completely
And
a
Polinia's
wait.
yellow too.
Maybe it was Polinia's I'm thinking of then. There was one of them that was like, wait, he got booked for that? Where I'm not even 100% sure it was a foul, but a yellow card just came out like very
He
quickly.
won the ball. He won
Right.
the fucking ball, and he showed him a card. And he looked
Listen,
at him and he was like, for what?
I know exactly what you're saying with Rub of the Green. You're calling me out there. I'll just say that there is some truth to that, and also it's very funny to me to log on to any social media platform right now and see an ample, and I mean, like, I know it's coming into my algorithm because I'm a Spurs fan and because I have Spurs content in my feed, but there is an ample amount of West Ham fans out there right now who are bitching and moaning and saying and pointing out all of these different instances. And they're doing it now, of course, with 2 matches left in the season when they are in the relegation zone, but they're pointing out all of these instances of not just matches that they were involved in, but pointing to this one, for example, between Spurs and Leeds, and saying, something has to be done about this. Like, the PGOML should be ashamed of themselves. And we're all sitting here going, what? Where have you been all season? Like, we've been getting the wrong rub of the green for much longer than anyone else. So it is comical to me to see all of the West Ham, fan accounts out there complaining. And I hope they're hearing this. I hope someone clips this and sends this to them, because you know what? Fuck all the way off with that stuff.
Listen, if I were a West Ham fan, which, God has not cursed me with such a fate, thank goodness, but if I were, I would be seething after what happened in their match against the Scum. That just goes to highlight a completely different area of narrative affirming decisions that
Mhm.
exists in this world of VAR, where the officials essentially dictate who wins and who loses matches.
Well, look at what happened
And
with West Ham and Everton a few weeks ago too, with the handball in the box. Like, what are we doing?
this is what the fuck I'm talking about, Andrew, is that it literally is like they're just moving chess pieces around at this
Yep.
point in time. And it's like, it's not even WWE because nobody likes it. Everybody's mad. Like, this is ruining football.
It's bad, man. And honestly, to James Madison's point, it is VAR at this point. Like, because the officials are allowing themselves to be influenced by the fact that they have backup and
They're in the fucking booth next week. Is my point, Andrew. That's
Mhm.
the whole thing. It's a rotating situation, like
Yeah.
umpires, right? Like, they're in the booth next week, so like there's like a code amongst the fraternity of referees where
But
it's like, don't
I
make the
mean from an
call. We'll
on-field
send it to the
decision
booth.
standpoint. Like I'm talking about from an on-field decision standpoint. VAR has ruined the game because officials are leaning too much on it. Rather than just calling the game,
Well, no, that's my point.
they are making a decision based on the fact that they have backup.
Well, what I'm saying is that they're making political decisions because there's a fraternity of
I know what you're
referees.
saying. I'm not going as far as saying they're political. I'm just saying that the decision making on the field is being skewed by the fact
Mate,
that there is backup.
mate, how many Premier League referees are there? 20,
Well,
maybe.
there's definitely more than 20. I think
No, 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 no,
overall,
no, no,
when
no,
you're talking
no.
about it, when you're talking about assistants and referees,
Well, no, no, no. I'm not talking about lines people and whatnot. I'm just talking about guys that'll be in the center of the pitch, right, or the fourth red, because it rotates, right? It's like center of the pitch,
I don't think it's
fourth,
quite 20. I don't think it's quite 20 then, but it's probably in that neighborhood.
right? So somewhere in there, right? But on the planet, in the Premier League, there are 20 of you. Do you understand how quickly you could fuck this up if you say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or make the wrong guy look bad? Like, to say that it's not political, especially when you have guys, smug individuals like Michael Oliver, who I'd rather kick down a flight of stairs than shake his hand. Like, just guys that have, and it's been that way for years, right? With the Mark Clattenburgs and the oh, what's the little short bald guy's name? I can't think of them. Anyhow, guys that are currently commentators, right? Like, that made the game way more about them than it was about the game on the pitch in certain moments. And it's like, and that was without VAR. Now with VAR, where you've got this cabal of decision makers in fluorescent kits, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Well, we'll leave the political part of it with this. I will leave you with this. I did see a report today that stated that if West Ham do go down, London taxpayers will be on the hook for an additional £2.5 million in order to fund the London Stadium. So yes, it is political. You're right. I will concede that point. There's a lot of moving parts with all of this. It's not good, but also
Dude, the
there's
fucking
not.
mayor came out with his support for
Yeah.
that lot.
Well, what are you gonna do,
Clown
man? What are
nose.
you gonna do?
Clown
Before we
nose.
move off of talking about this game, I do. There's no way we can move off of talking about the
There's
actual
more stuff.
game itself
Yeah,
without talking about Anton Kinski.
mate.
Because once again, and it's not just the save at the end of the game, which I did not
Mm-mm.
know was a save until the commentators didn't know it was a save until the replay. Like it was a shock to everyone that ball did not end up in the back of the net, and I have no idea. Like we talked about how Kinski, the one thing Kinski couldn't do well that Vicario does
Reaction
well is
saves.
reaction saves, and he's made so many good reaction saves. Not just the one at the end of the game though. I want to point to the one he made in the 21st minute where he had to go
Yep.
down low to his left
Down
and pin
low
the
to his
ball.
left
I
inside the
think that was
post.
off of a Joe Rudda header, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, just wow. Like Anton Kinski is blowing me away a little bit. With how well he's played and how poised he has looked, especially after what we saw in the Champions League debacle. So I guess is Vicario seeing the pitch again in these final two matches if healthy, or are you just
No.
riding this out?
No. Vicario has played his last game for Spurs. Thank you for a Europa League moment and the first trophy that this club has seen in far too long. And we wish you well back in Italy. Don't get caught with the brasses. I would say Antonin Kinski has exemplified the goalkeeper mentality, which is just have a short memory for tough moments and get back on it. The most important save is the next one. Go get it.
He's
And
done that pretty damn well.
listen, man, that guy, he's always been a big kid, but he's gotten thick this year. I don't know if you've noticed that, but my guy is definitely growing into like a full grown ass man right now.
He's
And he's
had time to
making
hit the
grown
weight
ass man
room.
saves.
Yeah.
Yeah, weight room for sure, right? If you're the backup and you're a kid, like get to work, and he has. So listen, that was the reason why we bought him. So I mean, you're gonna hear. I'm gonna say something right now that you didn't expect to hear come out of my mouth. And I'm gonna say, shout to Johan Langa for the Kinski find. This is the first of his projects that has truly paid dividends. That we've gotten traction out of Archie Gray and traction out of Lucas Bergvall. But these moments out of Anton Kinski to come back from the hardship that he faced
Yeah.
and to be able to be that guy because he needed to be that guy, like that makes Langa look way better than I think he should.
Well, and obviously that save late in the match will, if Spurs are able to manage to stay up, will go down as a really, because honestly, you're thinking in that moment, if they drop that match and don't get the extra point to move 2 ahead of West Ham, and that is of course where we stand. 2 matches to play, 2
Mm-hmm.
points clear. Goal difference I don't think is really going to be a factor here. Spurs are pretty well ahead there. So really you just need to
Yeah.
finish level on points with West Ham.
They got to go
And
to Newcastle. We
mhm,
got to go to the bridge.
right. I think that the only thing that makes me really nervous about this entire next week and a half or so with these 2 matches is Spurs have got to play their match their match in a place where they have really 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 struggled to score and win matches, and they have to play at Stamford Bridge as well. Like that's the hardest part for me. That is really like, because the home form has obviously been what it's been, and obviously what have they won 2 matches in 40 years at Stamford Bridge, something like that? Like we're talking
37
about
years.
a
37
long,
years,
long
sir.
time. So that's the only part of this that has me a little bit like, if they had gotten the 3 points against Leeds, we're looking at a 4-point gap at that point, and West Ham have to go get a result at Newcastle this weekend, or it's done and dusted before we get to
Well,
Stamford Bridge, which would have been great. But obviously, we're writing fairy tales. This is not the story that we get to tell at this point.
and then I think that very fact alone is one of the only reasons why, like, my frustration with PGMOL uh, burns with the intensity of the fire of 1,000 suns, and that's really because everybody knew that, and we played well enough to win that match. If they hadn't gone searching for a penalty against Tell, and it hadn't given a blatant no call against Matters in the final moment, there's a pretty good chance that we walk out of that match with a win at home, and it completely changes the narrative of what's going on.
Yeah.
Now we're 4 points clear. We're going to the bridge with momentum of 3-game winning streak, and Chelsea's still kind of trying to right the ship in their own right, and we've got a decent chance to put a little gap on here, right? But instead, PGMOL decides, nope, Tell, reckless, ridiculous penalty. Nope, Matters, that wasn't a pen, even though he wiped you out completely, went through the back of your legs, didn't even get a touch on the ball. It doesn't matter. 20-second check. That's a wrap. 2-point gap, 2 points to play. I don't know. I don't know if that's because they've already, given the title to Arsenal on the other end with the shenanigans that went on at the weekend. And so they need to keep the relegation battle interesting in order to, sell more advertising. I don't know what
Right.
it is, Andrew. But what I would say is I think 2 points from 2 games keeps us up.
I would agree with that, just because of the challenge that West Ham face. It's never easy to go to Newcastle, no matter how good or bad Newcastle are. That's just a tough place to play.
St. James Park
Um,
sucks.
and then they host Leeds, where we just saw the effort that they put in. Now, is that effort going to be the same that it was in another week and a half, where it's the last game of the season and it's 1-2-3
Where's that game
Cancun?
being played? Do
That
you
is a
know?
home match for West Ham. That's at the London Stadium.
Fuck.
So we're gonna on the final day we're gonna have two matches in London because Spurs host Everton, West Ham host Leeds. That will determine the relegation battle for unless unless Spurs go to the bridge and win and West Ham lose, which is the only scenario in which that is not the that is not the case. That it will come down to that final day. So that is kind of
Well,
where
hold
we
on, hold on,
stand.
hold on, hold on. If we win and they draw, it still happens that way.
That's true. That's that. Thank you. That is correct. That would be the case. Yeah. So basically, just go win at Stamford Bridge next week. No big deal.
Yeah,
The,
no big deal. Fucking
and
whatever.
that is the thing too. Like Chelsea's league form has been very, very poor. They did just get the draw against Liverpool this past weekend, but that was their first point in I think like 5 or 6 matches. And the fact that they do have to go play City on Saturday in the FA Cup final. That's the whole reason that this game got moved to next Tuesday, is because they're playing in the FA Cup final on Saturday. So maybe
And
there's
if we're
only
keeping
2
it
days in
100 right
between.
now, if we're keeping it 100 right now, City is going to blow their fucking doors off.
I hope
And
that match
I'm
goes to
looking
extra
forward to it.
time. I hope it goes to
No, no, I
pens.
know you do, and
Wear
you want to
them the
run it
hell
out.
out.
I hope they get demoralized so they can give a fuck about us.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where they don't care, but at least you're catching them at this time. Like this is the most ideal time to be catching them,
That's
I think.
fair.
And I do think that if you can go get a point, I'm just saying a point, I think that goes a long, long way to staying up. If you can get a point
Well,
there.
no, and I agree, because then especially if West Ham lose, then that's a 3-point gap going into the last day, and we win on goal differential. Like even if it's the results are inverted.
Exactly.
So
I will point out that I always am. I've been checking the Opta analysis predicted table and the percentage chances for relegation after West Ham was defeated on Sunday. That had dropped us down to a 12.35% chance of relegation. And after the draw against Leeds yesterday, that only spiked the percentage up to 18.7% chance of relegation for Spurs. So only about a 6% jump after we failed to win the game, but only got the point. So the point was pretty big, because if you lose that match, I do think it becomes a little bit more of a 50-50 proposition at that point. But right now, they still only have us at just under 19% chance of relegation. So it's there for the taking still. It is still, the ball is still in Spurs court, which I think is really important.
I'm telling you, man, if we can do some special things in the first half of these next 2 matches, I think
And then
that
just hold on for dear life.
and just hold on for dear life. I that's generally not my approach, but honestly, like if you watch the first half of the match against Leeds, we should have scored like 4 goals, or at least like there were so many chances for us to go up in that first half. We just didn't finish our chances.
Yeah,
And if you don't finish, if
statistically, Spurs put up 0.82 expected goals in the first half compared to Leeds, who had 0.13. Like Leeds were
yeah,
doing nothing in that first half.
no,
You're exactly right.
and so and we were there were just too many chances that we should have put away that we didn't. There was Richarlison shot over the box, the multiple ones that we talked about from outside the box. There was a missed header in the box where I literally thought to myself, I said, well, and this isn't an excuse, but it's literally what I thought in the moment. Well, if we had better players, like we would have finished those chances.
Right. That is when all is said and done, that is actually the problem. But to your
No,
point,
and I mean, and that's kind of where I'm at.
yeah.
Right? If
But
that's
to your
Kane
point,
instead of Richarlison, bro.
yeah,
If that's Ericsson instead of Gallagher,
yeah.
like
No, no arguments here. To your point, from a statistical standpoint, I had not actually looked this deep into it. But for the game, Spurs had 34 touches in the opposition box, 17 in each half. That's compared to Leeds, who had a total of 13. There were 5 in the first half, 8 in the second half. So
You got to
it,
finish those fucking chances, Andrew.
when you get it down there, you really do. Before we get out of here, I do want to touch on a few note things.
Yeah,
Lucas Bergvall did get a nod for the Sweden team for the World Cup this summer, which I think is
cool.
really awesome. Kudos to him. Obviously, Kulusevski was omitted from the team because he ain't been around, he ain't been playing, which sucks. Hopefully, we do see him come preseason, which will be here before you know it, believe it or not.
Shout to
Um,
you, my ginger prince.
Yes. And then from the Spurs women's side of things, a couple of really cool announcements this week that Martin Ho, number one, has been named one of
Mhm.
3 finalists for WSL Manager of the Season. And Olivia Holt was also nominated for Player of the Season. She is one of 8 finalists in that category. Obviously, we would not expect either of them to come home with the hardware, but really cool that there is a recognition of the nominations here and
Yeah.
just more signs of that upward trajectory on the women's side of the house.
Yeah, we are moving in a positive direction on that front for sure. A nod to Olivia Holt, and it should bolster her confidence going into next season as a true leader on this team. And Martin Ho is clearly, he's been rewarded by the club with a new contract, and it's nice to see that people around the league recognize exactly what a contribution he's made to this club this year.
And then just from the administrative side of things with Spurs women, their managing director, Andy Rogers, is actually leaving the club. He has been with the club for about 25 years, has served in a number of roles in administration, but has been the managing director of Spurs women since 2023. So a tip of the hat, he is retiring and wants to spend more time with the family, which I think we can all attest to. Spurs women will be back in action this Saturday. It is the final day of the WSL season. They travel to Brighton and will close things out there. So kind of a last hurrah and a fare thee well to what was a really positive season. Obviously, the most successful season in Spurs women history from a WSL standpoint. They have acquired the
100%.
most points. So it's nothing to. I'm not trying to brush over it, but like. Wow, like congrats, and let's kick like I've been saying for weeks now. I've just kind of been anticipating the summertime for Spurs women because I want to see what they're able to do, and we're seeing all of these announcements throughout the WSL of players leaving their club this
Mhm.
summer. Hey, anybody want to come play for Spurs? Like,
I mean, and I think that the answer to that question is going to be yes, more than you imagine.
I hope.
So it'll be really interesting to see. People seem to take really well to Martin Ho and his approach to football.
Yeah,
Um, I'm excited, man. I think that there's a lot of positive things on the horizon for Spurs.
I'm pumped too, and it's going to give me something to focus on this summer to avoid focusing on the World Cup because I am still
The
very
what?
much dreading. Yeah, exactly. I'm still very much dreading all of that, gestures wildly at everything going on, because that's gonna be not fun to pay attention to. So yeah, we'll see. But still 2 more matches on the men's side to get through too before we get to that. And
Hey,
and hey, it could be a really wild summer on the men's side of the house as well if things go poorly over the next week and a half. So
I
we'll
mean,
have
it
to.
could be a really wild, summer on the men's side if things go well, Andrew, because it's a fucking reset button if we stay up.
Yeah.
We get
Well,
to
it's a reset button either
slough
way, but
off the
yes.
the failures of this season,
Yeah.
and we go back to work. We're still one of the biggest clubs in the country, and we have a ton of draw with De Zerbi at the helm. Whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy, the one thing that I can say to this point in time and will continue to say is that his players play for him, and that says a lot to me.
Yeah. And they certainly have been. Dude's definitely getting a red card at some point here soon, though. He's
I
he's
hope
been
so.
booked. He's been booked already a couple of different times.
Yeah.
He definitely has that reputation among officials. You can
Well, and
tell,
we
like,
are definitely getting in the middle of the worst fuck you season the
yeah,
referees have ever given us at Tottenham.
yep,
And so, like, he's coming in here going, well, what in the wild fuck is this? Like, if you saw Mickey Van de Ven talking
oh,
to the referee, I just, Uh,
Mickey Van de
like,
Ven
and
has to be so dejected right now.
I think that that's one of the reasons why he wants to leave is because he see how bad we're getting fucked over, and he's like, I don't
Yeah,
want to be part of this anymore. I gotta go.
it does kind of feel that
Barcelona,
way
they
to some
don't
extent.
screw Barcelona over like this.
De Zerbi's definitely getting sent off against Chelsea at the bridge, right? Like that's probably we can probably if anybody has a link to a sports book that has odds on that, just at A
Dude, and
Stetka,
you
hit me up.
did you see who's fucking refereeing that match?
I did not.
It's your
I'm
boy
sure. I'm
fucking
sure it's a.
John Brooks.
I was gonna
I
say. I'm
want
sure it's a
to
real
I
winner
want
though.
to dude, I want to fucking stab somebody. I'm so violently frustrated
We will
with the
get
way that
there.
Spurs have
Yeah,
been refereed this season. I don't want
we
to go down
will.
that road any
How about
further,
this?
sir.
How about this? We will cross that Stamford Bridge when we come to it. How about that?
Oh, well done. Well played to you.
But those are the things to keep an eye out over the next week. Like I said, Spurs women closing things out on Saturday, and then West Ham play on Sunday away to Newcastle. So you'll certainly want to have an eye to that match because it's very, very important. And then we will be back next week after Spurs visit the bridge. We'll either record on Tuesday night or Wednesday night. So keep an eye on your feed for that. Likely to be Wednesday. I'll just say that, but maybe there's a chance we get it in by Tuesday evening after the match. So keep an eye out there. That is going to do it for this episode of The Depot. Be sure to check out the episodes on the YouTube page, as I mentioned earlier, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. If you are a regular watcher of the YouTube videos, do me a favor and just hit the subscribe button. That way it'll pop up in your feed anytime you are on YouTube. You can do the same
Tell your
thing
friends.
on your podcast app of choice. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating and review to help spread the word about the show. You can follow Todd at TC_Kasho. You can follow me at A Stetka. Most importantly, follow us at Tottenham Depot. We'll be back next week and we'll be clenching everything as we do. We'll talk to you then. As always, come on, you Spurs.